Hi everybody, and welcome to this tutorial on Adobe Illustrator, Creative Cloud Illustrator. In it we're going to be looking at some of the basic skills that you need in order to create some graphics in Illustrator, and also how you can put together your own insight visualization piece, whether that be an infographic or something else. So the first thing that we're going to look at is opening up a new document. So if you've opened up Illustrator, you're probably going to get something that's a little bit like this, although you may not have all these files like I do. These are other things I've been working on and using of late. But what you want to go over to is this little tab here that says Create New, because the first thing we need to do is have ourselves an artboard to draw on. So I'm clicking Create New there. We'll give that a second. Okay. What this window is going to show me in a second when it lights up is some options about my new document. Here they come. Alright, so as you can see, it gives you some recent items if you've got those. It also gives you these different kinds of artboard you might want depending on where you're delivering your infographic or insight visualization piece to. I'm going to go for web, I think. There we go. And yes, let's just start with something common. That'll be fine. My orientation is over here. I'm going to stick with a horizontal landscape for now. Click Create. Excuse me. There we go. And there it is. There is my artboard. It's a bit big at the minute. It's cut off on one side, but we can fix that in a second. Before we do, I am just going to, in fact, I'm going to zoom out on that and I'll show you how to do that in a second. There is another piece I want to open up, which is my Illustrator fact sheet, which you'll get a copy of. This is something I made that has some of the basic tool guides, some of the basic tools in fact that we're going to be using. So we'll go through some of these and learn how to do some basics, and we'll try and do that as quickly and as painlessly as possible. Right, there's a few things we need to do first to set out our stall here, and they are these things. Let's blow that up a little bit so you can see what it says. Here we are. Key things we need to learn are about drawing a shape with a pen tool, which lets you do it as and when you like, cutting shapes, that's making pie charts and donut charts, combining shapes to make images, grouping those shapes, and finally importing to PowerPoint. Okay, so those are the few things that we're going to be doing today. Right, I'm going to get rid of that right now. Let's see, let's take it there. Let's make that disappear. Right, here we go. So, some basics, some essentials to navigate yourself around the Illustrator artboard. By the way, that's what this white blob, this white rectangle I should say, is in the middle of the screen. It's an artboard, and everything we draw on the artboard we can then export as an image. Anything off of it we won't catch in our image when we export it, just so you know. Right, so the first thing we want to do is just have a look at some of our basics here. So the first one we've got is this is a vector shape. This square here is a vector shape. And what is a vector? Well, there's a long answer, the scientific answer, which is vector graphics in the creation of digital images through a sequence of commands or mathematical statements to place lines and shapes in a given two-dimensional or three-dimensional space. The short answer is, and the one that we really need to know, is it allows us to resize our images for both large and small without any kind of loss of resolution. It doesn't get fuzzy the more you blow it up or the more you shrink it down. It'll stay the same, and that's why it's such a powerful tool to use when reproducing these images all over the place. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the rectangle tool, this one here, which we can also find here, and we're going to make ourselves a vector shape like this one here. So let's go back to our original document, our blank document like you've got in place, and we're going to move our cursor all the way over to this tool section here, and we're going to select this one, the rectangle tool. There we go. Now when I move my cursor back, you'll see that there is a crosshair on the artboard. What I can do is I can click, hold down and drag, and that will give me a shape that I can move about. When I let go, that shape will remain in place. So that there's a rectangle. That's great. Got myself a rectangle. If I wanted to make a square or any shape where the proportions of all the sides remain the same, I hold the Shift key when I drag, and that gives me, in this case, a square. There we are. Now, a few other things we need to know, or we can do just to edit these images. This tool up here is the it's the selection tool. I'll talk about it here, a bit further down. Here it is, the selection tool. You can use it to select shapes and move them around the artboard. That's what it says just there, see? What we want to do is just select the shape, so I'm going to go up to my selection tool and click it, then I'm going to go over to this shape. You can see the outline turns red when I go across it. I'm just going to click on it, and then you obviously get these other little bits and pieces that come up. Now there's lots of things we can do now to edit our shape now we've selected it. There's all these white boxes on the outside. Well, if we go over to one of those boxes, the cursor will change, and it means we can stretch our shape. So if I push it here, I can stretch my image that way, or I can go back the other way, and I can do that from any of those points that you can see there. So over in the corners I can do that. Also, if I move my cursor outside the box and go to a corner, you'll get this kind of icon, and if I hold down and move now, I can rotate my image. Again, if I hold shift, that rotation will go to some default positions, which might be quite handy in trying to keep things aligned. So there we go, I can turn it that way. Perfect. The other thing I can do is, I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a little while. You'll see these little white lines in the corners. Sorry, white circles I should say. If I run my cursor over those, get to them, click and hold down, and then drag inwards, that will curve the corners of my rectangle. Just like that. If I want to undo that, I can go to edit up here, click undo. The other thing I can do is press Command Z, or Control Z if you're on a laptop, it's Command Z if you're on a Mac, and that'll also put it back. With this shape selected, the other most important thing I can do is I can change its colour. So inside here we've got the solid, and I could change that over here on this solid box, or up here as well in this control panel at the top. I'm going to use the control panel at the top right now. If I hit that drop down menu, it'll give me all these different colours. Let's just make this orange for now. There we go, perfect, it's orange. I can also give it a stroke, which is basically a line around the outside. So something that goes with orange, well, let's go with a dark red. There we go. You can just see it come up. It's not particularly clear. I can change that stroke in the control panel up here and make it larger if I want to. I can make it 8. There we go, and that's much larger, as you can see. And that's how I can do some basic edits of shapes once I've drawn them. Okay, still on the selection tool icons. I'm just going to move this one up into the corner as well. I have those two there. I'll zoom out a little bit. There we go. There's those two shapes. If I click anywhere else on my artboard, it will deselect the shape. There we are. Now, if you look in where the rectangle tool icon is, if I hold that down, you'll see I get a number of other shapes as well, such as a rounded rectangle tool, an ellipse tool, a polygon tool, a star tool and a flare tool. I won't worry about the flare tool for now. The others are quite important. The polygon, the polygon tool is particularly interesting and important because once I draw myself a polygon, well, that's going all over the place. Let's hold shift to keep it steady. Excellent. Let's go back to my selection tool and drag it down so it's in place. That looks good. Whilst it's there, in my control panel I also have this one here, so it's shape properties. If I click on that, I can change the number of sides my polygon has. So if I wanted to make a straight up triangle, I could just change that to 3 and hit enter, and I've got myself a triangle. I'll go back to shape. I'm going to change that back to, I think, let's try 5. Hit 5. There we go. Now, there is another way of drawing a triangle, and it's a freeform way. And this goes back to my my cheat sheet, as it were, here, in terms of this tool here, the pen tool. Okay, lets you draw shapes freehand. So let's have a go at that now. Let's go over to the pen tool here. Well, mine has a little plus side next to it. I don't want that right now. I want the pen tool. So if I hold down, I get these other options, and that's the one I want. So I'm going to select that, and as you'll see, a little pen is on the screen. Now all I can do is I'm going to click somewhere on my artboard that I haven't before. There we go. And that's created an anchor point, which is great. Now when I move the cursor away, I get this line follow me wherever I go. What I want to do, well, I'm going to make a triangle, so I want a flat edge at the bottom, which is the easiest way of making a triangle to start with. I'm going to hold shift like I did before, and that'll give me a straight edge. There we go. And the next time I click, I'm going to create another anchor point. Done. Now when I move it again, the line follows me once more. Now, the great thing about Illustrator is it has these smart guides that will allow you to know where the middle of an object is when you get to it. So there we are. That pink line there, that's my smart guide. That's telling me that is the middle of the baseline of my triangle. So I'm going to click and make another anchor point there. Now I have two. It looks like the triangle's complete. It isn't complete. I'll show you by getting rid of this black. There you go. That's just if I select this none here, that'll get rid of the black. There you see, it's gone. So you can tell now that my triangle isn't completely finished. If I move back down to my original anchor point, the first one, you'll see that little change in the icon. You get a little circle under it. Well, if I click on that now I have a full triangle, because when I move away, I no longer have a line following me, and that'll happen no matter what kind of shape you make. The more lines you make, as long as you close the loop up, there's your shape and it's done. Let's move back a little bit there. I want to get back to my triangle. Right. Now my triangle is transparent, so I'll go back to the selection tool, and as I click on it, well, it's already selected my triangle because it's the last thing I had selected, and let's just fill it. Let's use this fill this time instead of this one up here. Let's go to here, double click on this fill. I can make it anything I want. Let's make it pink, and I have all these options. I can move around here for different shades, and this up and down for even more shades, and colours in fact. Click OK, there we go, and now I have a pink triangle. So that's some basic shapes you can make using the rectangle tool and other shape tools, and also the pen tool as well. Now, how about combining some of these? Well, let's do a few things first, a few other little tricks. A lot of shapes on my page now, not a lot of room to draw anything else, so I'm going to go back to that selection tool, and I'm going to click it and hold down somewhere on my artboard, and I'm going to drag, and as I drag you'll see I get this dotted square appear. And this you might be familiar with if you're highlighting more than one file at once. When I let go, once I've encompassed all the shapes that I've drawn, they all become selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them into the corner by letting my cursor go over that little box there. I'm going to hold down the shift key so it keeps everything proportioned and drag that like so. There we go, and move it over. Perfect. The other thing I can do is group these so they'll all move together. Well, actually, before I do that, the other way you can select them, you can obviously do what we just did there, or like on other selection processes on any computer, I can select one, I can hold shift, move over to the next, click that one, that's two selected, still holding shift, and again, and they're all selected. If I want to keep those shapes together so they'll always move around together, I don't have to keep reselecting all of them. Once inside of this area that I've selected, I can right click on my mouse and go down to this little selection here, group. If I click on that, well, now my objects or my shapes are all grouped. So if I click on any of them, they all get selected and they all move around.